What is happening, my friend?
Hey, Merry Christmas.
I'm glad that you said that because that's becoming politically incorrect to say that these days.
Yeah, I'm too old for that. And I am pretty politically correct, and I
Are you?
Well, I mean, I try not to be, a complete jackass, but there are some things I just don't get down with. So I'm not going to say happy holidays just in case you're not a Christmas person, because I am of no religious persuasion. So Christmas is what I was brought up with. It's not a religious thing to me. It's a season. So I don't care about any of that. So I don't really say happy holidays. I do sometimes in business correspondence just to be careful. But here on the podcast, it's Merry Christmas to
of
our
course.
listeners.
What is coming out of the White House? What do they say? Is it happy holidays, or is that too
I don't
white
know.
Christian nation anymore? Is there something else that they're saying?
See what Jen Psaki's saying, and then I can circle back to you on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Because even it seems to me, and you see it because the Democrats are in power, and of course they use things like Twitter. Biden and Harris will tweet out things, but there's like a holiday every day. There's a new, whether it's we have to congratulate these people or those people, or happy this, happy that.
I think they have to be careful. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Trump White House didn't
They
care.
threw away all the holidays.
Yeah,
they looked at the schedule for the next year and said, what holidays? There's more holidays than there not. Let's cancel all of those.
Oh, my God. I saw a picture on Instagram the other day of the Trump White House with Melania's satanic red Christmas trees all throughout the White House.
The trees were red?
It was a hellscape, a Christmas hellscape, right? And then, then below, they show the current White House Christmas decorations, green, white, red,
gold.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Gold balls.
Right? Gold balls. Red balls. Blue balls.
You had to. You had to go there.
So, I was like, oh my God, that was so satanic and communist. I mean, but
doesn't that make sense? Because everybody accused Trump of being in bed with Putin, so he might as well have the country's national colors.
And Melania is obviously a Russian spy. So.
Is she Russian?
She's not Russian.
Isn't
She's
she
Slovakian or something?
So that's kind of Russian.
Sort of. Kind of Eastern European.
Right. Well, maybe she was part of Russia at one point.
Maybe she's Crimean. I don't know. She is Slovakian, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I don't remember that. I remember there was a lot of controversy because I thought it was the gold drapes that he put in the Oval Office. And of course, his office in Manhattan was, decorated with gold, and he's got gold handles on the toilet and all kinds of shit.
There is no end to the fascination for me if I get a glimpse inside really wealthy New Yorkers' abodes. Trump was very much that way. All his taste is in his mouth. But, very many of them have really tasteless interiors with too much glitz and shit like that. I'm not down with that, so.
Isn't that, the White House in general, it's this, a lot of tradition, old history. They have different colored rooms with tapestries and china, and that shit's worth a fortune.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they check Trump's bags on the way out.
You think that he swiped a couple of things, maybe some silverware on his way out, real silver?
Griff. That's all I can say about that whole situation. Glad they're gone. Hope he's having a good Christmas.
Do you?
No, but I think you got to say it at least.
I don't think you have to say it. But it's good that I don't remember the red Christmas trees in the White House, but I'm glad that we still have a tree in the White House. I'm glad we haven't abandoned that. And it's more for me, listen, I talk all the time about, not that I'm anti-religion, I'm just not religious and, I'm not a believer in the faith. Or he in the heavens, or whatever you want to say.
A Christmas tree is a lot more in line with the pre-Christian beliefs, right? It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's the before Christianity, the religions were what did they call them? What kind of religions were they? Sun worshipers and this.
Yeah,
and that,
well, there was many gods.
There were many gods, and a lot of it, I can't think of the right word. Not hedonistic, but anyway, Christmas trees and some of the ornaments and the whole thing. Not much of it has anything to do with Christianity, and the way I understand the history of it is that the Christian religion sort of kind of let people retain their pre-Christian Christmas and, some of the symbols that they used before Christianity
traditions.
came. Yeah, some of their pre-Christian traditions, so that the changeover from those prior beliefs to Christianity would be a little smoother, right? It's why they still let them have the Easter bunny and Easter eggs represent Easter, which has nothing to do with, resurrection of Christ or anything like that. So it's a real combination. I'll think of the word eventually, but it's a real combination of those things. So I don't think we'll ever see the Christmas tree. I mean, maybe when there's a Muslim president. I don't know when that would be. Or
maybe when there's a shortage of trees to cut down.
Well, it might be a fake tree.
I mean, that's got to be a thing first.
Let me tell you a success story. My wife was traumatized in her youth by her mother having a green aluminum Christmas tree with a color wheel.
That sounds pretty cool. Let's bring that back.
Well, I'm all about mid-century. I mean, I would take a room if I could get my hands on that equipment.
Do you guys still have it?
No. So her mother doesn't even remember. I would never have that. But so Debbie, we've never had a fake Christmas tree ever. Every year for 40 straight Christmases, our first Christmas was Christmas 1981. I have asked her for two things. Can we get a flock tree or can we get a fake tree? Because I'm sick of paying these prices and I hate going out to the Christmas tree lots. That was a hard no all the way through 40 times in a row. Well, actually 38 times in a row. So not last year, but the Christmas before, we had been getting our trees consistently from Costco. Prior to that, Home Depot. Costco was coming through with some pretty reasonably priced trees, and you buy them, though, tied up. So unlike a Christmas tree lot where they're all standing up.
You don't know what they look like till you get them home.
Right. So typically you got to take it. They frown on you cutting open a bunch of trees and not buying them.
Which is ironic because you can return most shit at Costco, except for the tree.
I don't know. Can you take back the tree? The trees are not there long enough
I
for me
wouldn't
to make
be,
a return.
so I can think of some people that I know that would try that.
So, not last Christmas, was Christmas before. We bought the tree, sight unseen, all tied up, brought it home, and it was terrible. Oh, my God, it was crooked. It had bald spots. It was just a fucking mess. And Debbie was once again traumatized in the other direction.
But it was a real tree.
It was a real tree.
Real trees, like people, have flaws. They have bald spots and they're crooked.
Well, very much like old men.
Right.
So, we got through that Christmas. I thought it looked fine. I mean, she's really good at decorating it and so forth, but she didn't like it. She didn't enjoy having it. She was butthurt over it the whole time. So last year, I made my annual suggestion. There's a hard no on the flock.
Why can't you get two? Maybe you get a his and hers tree.
Because
one that's flocked.
No, because really, if we're going to have a his and her tree, mine will be non-existent. So
yeah, but you could get
that every year.
Yeah, but you could get your decoration. Maybe you keep it up all year, half the year.
I already suggested that too. So all right. So anyway, we bought a tree at Home Depot last year for I think under $300. It's fantastic. It's taller than the trees we could buy on the lots. It's perfectly shaped. It looks great. The lights are already installed. They have a remote control for all the lights. I mean, the light bulbs don't hang inside the tree. They're embedded in the fucking
so you have
branches.
a fake tree then.
We do. We bought it last year. So this is our second year with a fantastic fake tree.
Yeah, that's all you need.
I don't give a shit. Yeah, really. I mean, do you miss the smell? Here's the problem.
Spray it. They got spray.
Well, during the winter, my nose is plugged up about 90% of the time. I can't smell shit.
Yeah, you've sounded terrible lately.
I know. This whole season, I'll be all nasally because my sinuses get messed up, and so I don't really smell it anyway. And if you really want to smell, go get a real wreath or something, right? Or get the spray, or get over it. I don't care. So anyway, Christmas is in full.
But are you going to be one of those guys then? Because you told us the story about how you hung your lights.
Yeah.
Are you going to turn into one of those guys that keeps the lights up all year?
I am working on a retirement project that should make me a zillionaire.
Yes, let's hear it.
Well, I'm working on some way, and when I say working on it, I mean this is just
you're sleeping and you're dreaming at night about these ideas.
About somehow LED lights that are embedded in your fascia boards or something that don't look like you have Christmas tree lights, but then you can just flick a switch and all of a sudden they'll be on.
But this is a good idea, but how would they be embedded in the fascia? Like, is there a flap? Like, I'm thinking a secret James Bond kind of like in the bumpers of the cars that hide the explosives that drop. Mm-hmm. Is this a secret flap that opens to expose the lights, or how are they just camouflage lights?
I think during the non-Christmas time, and I'm giving away a lot of trade secrets here. So
but I need to help you flesh this out before you spend your money on these patents that don't materialize for you.
Oh yeah. Well, something I've learned from my current employer is you never bother to patent anything. You just go with it. Nothing's
fight it out.
Yeah, nothing's worth it. If they want to steal it from you, just let them have it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe drill a hole all the way through the fascia board from the back, but that's not good. That lets air and moisture into the wood, so that's not a great plan. But you could drill a hole from the backside, push the lights up to close to the front of that hole, run the wires all through the back of the fascia board so that they're there all the time and out of sight. So thinking about it, but probably not going to happen.
How about, you have the lights on the fascia, and then you have like like a flap, maybe it's aluminum flashing or something that has hinges. Picture this, hinges on the bottom of the fascia, and the flap folds up.
Yeah,
so most of the year it's kind of hidden out of sight. Then it comes down, and then you can see the lights.
That's awesome. Maybe I could just drape something over them during the rest of the year.
I mean, all of that expense and work for a couple of weeks of a higher electricity bill. What are we doing? What's wrong with us, Americans?
I think probably this is a real first world problem, right? Nobody in Haiti is worrying about
because they have no electricity.
They got lights but no electricity,
right?
And they don't do Christmas, so. So that's what's going on. I once I get the lights up, I really enjoy it. I like having them up, and I do a pretty good job of it. So my lights are all,
it puts you in the Christmas spirit.
Yeah,
you're happier.
I am.
You're more fun to be around.
Thank you. It's funny because I left work just a few minutes after 5. Oh no. I left work a little before 5, and but by the time I got home, it was dark. So for the first time this season, because I called Dave to say, I'm on my way home, she went out and flicked on the Christmas lights so that they would be on when I pulled up. Because otherwise, I don't see them, right? If they're off when I get home.
And who flips them off?
Well, on my way to bed, flip the lights out. And I put in, so last year when I went to Hawaii, I put in a
timer?
Yeah, on the light switch so there's an inside switch for the porch light, right? And we wanted something that I could set on a timer to go on and off so it didn't look like we were on vacation, right? The light's either on all the time or off all the time. And I'm a big believer in having light around your house so that, the burglars go to that dark house next door. So, anyway, that's been in there, but then this is the first Christmas with the automatic light set in there. So I have to figure that out. I got to reset the schedule on that so it doesn't turn on. So just flip one off. At 10 o'clock or something when I go to bed, I flip off the Christmas lights and flip on the porch light.
Why don't you get one of those, electrical sockets you can plug in and control it with an app?
It's that's what I did. It's a Leviton, right? So I took off the little plate. So in the front hall, in the entryway, I have a two switch thing. So I took off the plate, pulled out one of the one that controlled the porch light, and put in the app controlled one. So yeah, I do have a control, and I can set a schedule.
Yeah.
So
look at you, all high tech.
I know. That took me and my brother-in-law 4 hours last year before we
for one receptacle.
Yeah, we could not figure it out. We just kept messing up the wiring until it wouldn't work. But finally, we got it. So, and then Debbie bought a plug off Amazon for 99 cents. You plug it in, you plug whatever, your lamp or your Christmas lights on the inside, whatever. She puts a bunch of garland with lights in it on the mantelpieces for over the fireplaces. And so we plug that into a 99-cent Amazon switch, and then you go to your Alexa app and you can turn on that switch from your phone.
You're an Alexa guy, huh?
We have Alexa. I have both. I have I have one of those. I have the kids got me the Apple one, the little round ball with Siri inside it.
Right.
So
if that thing cost 99 cents,
yeah.
What do you think it costs to make? I mean, what did Amazon actually pay for it that they can sell it to you for 99 cents?
Well, here, let's get political.
Yeah. Because this is a political show.
Probably the forced labor of the Uyghurs in China made that switch.
So, like, no compensation.
Yeah, it probably didn't cost them anything. I mean, they barely feed those people, and they're prisoners. It's a slave forced labor camp.
So it's 100% profit for Amazon because they get to keep all 99 cents.
You know, Amazon, Apple, we're coming to kind of a crossroads here with some of our big companies about about how they're dealing with China, right? I mean, I don't have a bunch of details, but I became aware that there were some secret, and when I say secret, I mean not made public to the American public, negotiations between Tim Cook and China.
As far as what?
Well,
supply?
Because their fucking phones are made in China.
Right.
And it's pretty evident that there's a lot of forced labor going on in China, especially out of certain regions where the Muslim minority, the Uyghurs, are in concentration camps. And, I mean, it's slave labor.
So what was obviously
they're still making them. They make most of the fucking iPhones,
right?
In China.
And remember, in the early days of COVID, just because of supply chain issues, Apple was concerned about that. And then they were talking about setting up factories in, was it South Korea, moving shit away from China. But I don't think it was because of doing, the noble thing of slave labor. It was, hey, we just got to get these cheap fucking phones to our Americans so we can sell them for $1,000 a piece.
I think the truth of it is, as politically correct as Tim Cook would probably like to be, I don't think they give a shit.
I don't either.
Right. So, and do we? I mean, the question is, do we?
We don't.
No, we apparently don't.
And you think about that.
We buy more iPhones than anything else.
And everything else. All the stuff we've talked about with the containers, ships, parked off the coast here, the West Coast, and supply chain issues. Like, I've seen more and more articles of stories where they're trying to shame us Americans because we consume too much.
Who, the Chinese?
Well, I don't know. These fucking libtard writers are who are writing these stories. But it's essentially, we as Americans have a consumption problem, and we are the problem because we're buying too much shit. And it's not a supply chain issue. We're bleeding the planet and slave labor and all of that.
All the environmental issues that we face, whether it's connected to climate change or air quality or anything, it's all consumer driven. I mean, our whole GDP and our whole economy is consumer based. We're not manufacturing shit.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard fact to face that we don't appear to be in any way prepared to face that.
You can't slow down the cycle, which was the whole thing with COVID, turning off the economy. You can't turn off an economy that its only function is to buy shit.
That's right. So, okay, so a couple things. Now you're making my mind kind of go in two different directions. I want to talk about the economy and COVID and Omicron for a second, but before we go there, since we touched on China, let me raise this issue and see what your thoughts are on this. So I got some inside information.
How are you getting all this inside information?
I got people.
What clubs are you in now that you're getting all the secrets?
I have some reliable inside information that we are about to ship an assload of military weaponry to Australia. That is directly a result of the frayed tensions with China. So having said that, it gets a little more real, right? We talk about, it's like, oh, we're going to piss off China. Well, who cares? We piss them off all the time. If 4 years of Trump didn't start a nuclear war,
nothing will.
Well, but here's the problem. China was ignoring Trump when American Democrats and American presidents like Biden start posturing with them, who knows, right? And then you have our allies, right? Because the chances are we're still not going to fight a direct war with China, but could there be a proxy war in, say, Australia? There could.
So what's the angle with Australia? What's the move there?
Well, the move there is that we're sending a ton of military equipment to Australia. Not to mention, we fucked over the French and took away their multi-billion-dollar, I think it was Air Force, fighter plane contracts and stuff like that. We're doing everything we can to shore up our military relationship with Australia because of the tensions with China.
But I don't mean to burst your bubble, but I don't know where you're getting this inside information. But chances are, if you know about it, that the Chinese also know about it. They probably know that we're shipping massive amounts of weapons to Australia.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. And and the conclusion regarding the reason why we are, I have the piece of information that's extremely reliable that we are doing that. But why are we doing it? That's my own conclusion, that it's because of the situation with China, because of the tensions with China. So, so having said all that, all this stuff with China gets to be a little bit crazy, right? So China, are we on the verge of
I don't know.
conflagration with China?
Well, you and I talked about this in relationship to Russia and, whatever the hell they're doing with Ukraine. And
so they're doubling down.
I know.
Right? So it seems like Trump and Putin went to the same school of public relations.
But think about it. We're at this weird point where we just talked about, our economy, how we consume everything. So we need the Chinese for all of our 99-cent plugs that we want to buy in our iPhones. And the Chinese need us to sell it to. I mean, what good is it if you have all these manufacturing capabilities and you have no customers buying your shit?
That's always been my theory about our relationship with China, why it would be better to have a strong economic bond with China than not.
Which we do.
Yeah, which we do. And I think that still holds true. I mean, I think that they're not going to let us bully them on the international stage anymore because they're just too damn powerful.
But what can either of us really do?
Tough. I mean, and again, I don't see U.S. military forces landing on Chinese shore or vice versa. But, could it be Japan? Could it be Taiwan? Could it be Australia? Could it be New Zealand? Could it be some other island in the Asian, theater, in the Pacific Ocean?
I mean,
who the fuck knows? Right?
I mean, could the Chinese possibly be, like in technology, in the iPhones, could they actually insert something in the phone so that they could, just disable it, shut it off? Is that something Apple would know about? Like the Chinese could get pissed off at us and say, well, fuck you. We're going to shut down all of your iPhones for a week. Then see what you guys do.
I would think that a significant amount of iPhones were being taken apart by the cybersecurity forces of the United States
to
military.
Check that?
Yeah, to make sure that's not happening. And I'm pretty sure that the reason why we don't have a bunch of Huawei phones
is for that very reason.
Is because they took them apart and they were stuffed full of
I think so
Chinese
too.
Technology.
Remember I had a Huawei phone for a while?
I do. I remember you're like, this is the hottest new phone ever. I don't care if it's anti-American. No, you didn't never say that.
I love that phone.
Yeah.
But I was getting all kinds of calls at night and people driving by my house in blacked out vehicles. I'm not sure what that was about.
Hello. Yeah, that's. Do
you think it's going to come to a point where Americans, they through their virtue signaling that we say, hey, wait a minute, we have to support, the humanitarian causes and not allow these people to work in these factories, and we're not going to buy these phones. Like, aren't we boycotting the Winter Olympics, as if anybody gives a shit about that anyway, because of how China treats its people?
Well, my opinion about that is either boycott them or don't. I mean, you're not boycotting the Chinese Winter Olympics if you're still sending all the athletes there.
Well, we're boycotting by way of not sending any U.S. diplomats, right? But you're right.
Do they give a shit?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't care.
China came out and said, well, if you do that, we're going to retaliate. I don't know what they're going to do.
They're going to airdrop Huawei phones.
Exactly.
From a blimp.
It could be
so slow moving that the U.S. military doesn't track it. I think that the better strategies all the way around is with China is to engage with them as much as possible, keep the prospects of U.S. consumerism that benefits them at the forefront, and then always couch that with objections on the national front regarding things like the Uyghurs and stuff in China. I mean, we don't care if they're communists. Their people don't seem to care
because they don't know any better.
Well, I mean, that's not North Korea, but here's the thing, So is there a way? Is it possible that China would, quit, stop the genocide of Uyghurs in their country? Or
how many people is this?
I don't know. It's a few million, I think.
That they're killing?
Well, they're incarcerated. They're in concentration camps, being worked to death.
What is the population of China now? They're in the billions, right?
It's got to be 5 billion, and then I think the rest of the world is 2 billion.
Now, because what's India? India's got to be way up there too.
India might be up there. I mean, we're 350
million,
right?
Which seems like, honestly, 2 billion when you get out on the roads. It's way too much.
Downtown LA traffic.
Yeah.
That's so funny. This country is virtually empty. There aren't.
You always say that, but you don't know. You don't ever go anywhere. It's not as empty as you think.
Well, okay.
Would you? I mean, I've said this to you before. Could you
fly over Montana and even see a human being? I don't think so.
Yeah, in between the elk. They're there.
Behind the elk. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Close behind.
I mean, let's say the demand for Chinese goods goes down for the sole reason that Americans, become woke about that too, and they say, well, we're just not going to support a country who treats its people that way, therefore we're not going to buy your products.
I just don't see us.
Would you do that?
No, because I don't look now.
I don't either.
I can tell you a funny Christmas story. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm so in the mood for storytelling. A few years ago, I was in a shopping center in Orange County called whatever it's called. It's down there.
What, South Coast Plaza?
Yeah, no, 57. No, a little downscale from South Coast Plaza. The other one,
Walmart?
No. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was at a store, a popular clothing store that I won't plug here, and the lines were long, right? And so the line was long, and I was the next person in line, and then there were a bunch of people behind us, and there was a person at the register giving the poor salesperson just a ton of shit because the clothes in this store had made in China labels on them.
What did this person expect?
Well, she thought that the best idea she could come up with that day with 20 people in line behind her was to take 15 minutes to bitch at this store about carrying everything, in the store.
When was this?
Oh, this is about 4 years ago.
So was Trump in office? Was it the Trump
long
effect?
Before. Actually,
okay.
So it's got to be more. It's probably 6 years ago.
All right.
So we listened to this for 15 minutes, and I'm standing in line going, get the fuck out of here, would you please? And Debbie's hit me in the arm going, shut up, don't say anything. And other people in line are going, what the hell is going on? And so everybody knew that this lady was bitching out this sales girl about this clothes being made in China.
Right.
And so she finally leaves, and I go up to the register, me and Debbie, and the sales girl goes, I am so sorry. Thank you for waiting. I so appreciate your patience. I go, hey, no problem. I know it's Christmas time. It's busy. And there's not going to be any problem as long as the stuff I'm buying here isn't from China.
Did she look at you like...
Debbie hit me so hard in the arm, all the feeling went out of my right hand for a week, And the poor sales girl, her eyes they literally just... I didn't think they could open anymore.
That's got to be that person just trying to be a dick, right? Because how do you not know that? I mean, especially garments. That shit isn't made here.
Self-important.
Nothing's made here.
Self-important nonsense. Probably a non-vaxxer.
Little did we know. The original Karen, right?
Well, she was definitely the Karen.
How old was this person? Is this a...
she was a middle-aged white woman.
Was she your age, older than you? She's not a boomer, right?
Well, probably younger than me. I mean,
but in the boomer category?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I was looking at her back most of the time. So
I saw a woman the other day. Where was it? I think it was I was sending a package. I was at the UPS store, and there was a woman older than you, but she's a boomer, and let's face it, they take a lot of shit because of the way they act sometimes. And she had written down the address of where she was going to send this package. And the guy at the register is a young guy. I mean, probably in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And she hands it to him, and he's going to type in the address. And he says to her, "What street is this again? What does it say?" She goes, "It's written right there. Can't you read it?"
Oh, man.
And he says, "No, ma'am, I can't read your writing." And she says, "It was in cursive." And she says, "What's the matter? They don't teach cursive anymore?"
Oh, my God.
And he says, "No, ma'am, actually they don't." Or when, again, he's in his early 20s. So when he went to school, they didn't. And she went off. She's like, I'm from Chicago, and I used to be an elementary school teacher, and it's a disgrace in this country that we don't teach cursive anymore. And look what it's doing. It's dumbing down the youth of America. Look at you. You honestly can't read it? And she's berating this kid. And then ultimately, she verbally told him what the address was, and he typed it in, and he just looked on his face like, I got to put up with this shit. I'm sure he puts up with shit like that all day, especially this time of year.
That is what's going to turn that generation, going to make them receptive to the idea of herding up all the old people and turning them into food.
Exactly. And it's already happening. Like people like that, how can you not expect that when you go into a home, when you're old and need to be cared for, that the young people are going to be like, listen, there's 2 vials here. One of these things will keep you alive, and the other one will instantly take you out of my misery. Let's do that one. I mean, that kind of shit makes me crazy.
I try not to think about what's going to happen. I mean, this is not a pleasant subject, but as you get older, unfortunately, you start to look around, especially as your older relatives get really older. I'm 65 now, so, I'm not part of the young side of the family or by any stretch of the imagination. So now I'm looking at, how sad it is for the older family members and just older people in general. So people that are, and they're not that much older than I am anymore, 10 years.
That makes a big difference, though.
30 years, 20 years. I mean, if you're 20 years older than I am, you're 85. You're everybody in existence is going to push you around till the day you die. I mean, that's just how it is.
But there's also a factor there, a multiple. So like right now in 2021, you being 65, somebody who's 10 years or 20 years older than you really is like 30 years older than you.
And why is that?
Well, because people I think are healthier and
oh yeah, I'm the model for health. That's for
what
sure.
I mean is as time goes on, like, 50 is the new 40 and 60 is the new 50 and all of that. And as time goes on, it's going to be even more aggressive that way.
I think it's something that my wife and I just, we're spending a lot of time with my wife's mom, and she has really severe dementia. And to be honest with you, it's like the best kind of dementia. And by that, I mean, it's not Alzheimer's. And so it's not aggressive. She doesn't not know who we are. But she has 0 short-term memory. So you tell her something, hey, where are we going? We're going to the store, Mom. 25 seconds later, hey, where are we going? We're going to the store.
I do that.
Yeah, but not 10 times.
I do it like 5 times.
I mean, sometimes the phone calls come, if she gets off on something when she's not with us and she thinks Debbie knows the answer, it keeps popping into her mind every 5 minutes. And so the phone will ring 10 times in an evening, right? Just with her asking the same question. So even not being with her doesn't make it, so it's hard for us because we're still mentally, acute, but it doesn't seem like that far off. And I'm thinking about how I'm thinking about her mom and how little patience we have in reality, because it's just so hard, dude. I don't know if you're dealing with this.
And part of that is your generation too. That was the knock against the baby boomers
what,
in general.
Assholes?
Well, that you have little patience, like this lady at the UPS store.
Oh my God. Little patience.
And the at least 20 other examples that we've cited on this podcast.
Well,
of stories you've told about not having any patience.
I know. I have something I've said for a long time. I hope it's true. You just can't worry about stuff that hasn't happened yet, much. I mean, you can't, if you spend your time reacting to things that haven't happened yet, it's just a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, that's a healthy way to look at it.
So that's where you try to keep this kind of thing in your mind. But it's hard. It gets harder every day. And I'm thinking to myself, and we know people that are, exactly 10 years older than I am. And every day we're sort of questioning, what's the real story? What's the, how mentally, alert, is someone that's, 75.
Well, that's why
80.
with certain industries, and, I think like pilots, for example, there's forced retirement at a certain age for commercial pilots. I don't know what it is, maybe 60, 65.
Don't you think that's a good idea?
I do, absolutely.
Yeah, even though, but I would guarantee you, Travis, if you were a commercial pilot, I know you're an amateur pilot.
Yes, thank you.
but if you were a commercial pilot and you were, because here's the thing, at 65 or 70, you very possibly do not feel any different in your mind than you did when you were 30.
But the chances of you just all of a sudden having a heart attack or a stroke go up, right?
Well, that goes up, and then
like, what about a surgeon? And maybe there's an age limits for surgeons too. But do you want someone who's got your chest open?
I want my surgeon to be in elementary school.
Exactly.
Yeah, so crazy. Yeah,
or judges, Supreme Court judges, or presidents.
Term limits.
Ageism.
Term limits.
Presidents. Biden.
I know. Senators.
All of them. Where have I asked you this? Where are you on assisted suicide for really old people or people in pain or have terminal illnesses that have no chance of recovering?
No,
not suggesting that we take our elderly politicians and deliberately terminate them. I'm just, if you're in there, I would never.
You who never misses a chance to applaud some type of population reduction situation. Yeah, sounds like a great idea. I mean, the good thing about COVID is it's knocked out 800,000 people.
Well, and absolutely, even like the issue we talked about a minute ago with our consumption problem. The real issue is not that we're consuming shit. Is there's too much of us, consuming stuff. Right?
No.
Even your buddy Elon. Which, by the way, did you see Elon Musk got Time Person of the Year?
I did see that. Yeah, but what does that really mean anymore?
Here's what it means. It means that Time Magazine, which we've already known for a long time, is also now owned by the woke liberal media, and they had to give him that accolade.
Why would the woke media have to give him that accolade?
I don't know. I just worked it in.
Well,
why wouldn't it go to? Wasn't it? I thought there was discussion about.
Well, wouldn't it go to the people that developed the fucking?
That's what I thought.
COVID vaccine.
That's what I thought, and I thought, and they've in the past they have named more than one person Time Person of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, look, Person of the Year from Time Magazine used to be a big deal.
It used to be,
right? It's just not the big deal.
When would you say it became not a big deal?
When they, I don't know.
I'm going to tell you when.
When?
And I don't know what year it is, but I believe this is probably maybe 10 years ago now, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bono, Bill Gates, and Melinda Gates were all three on the cover, and they were named Time Persons of the Year. And Bill Gates,
because they were having a menage a trois.
Who knows? I mean, at that time, if I have this right, which very possibly I don't.
It is couch funeral.
It is, so we can make up whatever we want. I mean, Bill and Melinda Gates, of course, had the foundation. They still do. Maybe they were, donating some shit. I mean, really, what we know now is they were setting the stage for the Great Reset and the Great Takeover and the whole, COVID issue that has come around in the last 2 years. And for Bono, maybe he was, selling iPods at the time. I don't remember. But
why was he Person of the Year? Because of his charitable work?
I guess. What makes someone worthy of Time Person of the Year?
I don't know. I mean, so, what's his name? Elon Musk he's such a weird figure, right? Yeah. I mean, he's just a mishmash of inconsistencies, right? You hear him talk now about, like, hey, government, get your hand out of my pocket, right? But it just a few years ago, he took millions or billions of dollars from the U.S. government to start Tesla. So,
are you sure about that?
Yeah.
How did he get millions of or what did you say? Millions?
Yeah. I don't know.
In what way?
I don't know.
I thought he made his money like he was an early PayPal guy. He invested in PayPal or something.
PayPal?
Yeah, I think so. And then when eBay bought PayPal, he had some huge payout. And then he started SpaceX and then Tesla.
You look it up. You got your computer right there. I'll vamp while you look it up. Elon got some kind of money from the government at the beginning of his skyrocketing career, which doesn't mean shit. I'm sure it was a legitimate program. I'm sure lots of other people have too. But it's his, it's his attitude down the road, right?
Yeah, but government has also changed, and that's the whole idea of the government-private citizen relationship has changed exponentially in the last 5 or 10 years.
Right. Well, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of questions about what he's doing, right? One of the richest, arguably, depending what day it is, the richest person in the world is.
That's a good way to say it.
His money to get off the planet.
Who can blame him?
Well, good riddance.
I read this story that they found a significant amount of water on Mars in this deep, deep valley that kind of looks like the Grand Canyon, actually.
Oh, yeah?
And I couldn't tell. I don't think there's actual water now, but obviously.
Well, there's water on Mars. There are frozen. There are ice caps.
Yeah, frozen deposits, and maybe that's what this was. But it looked like the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
of water.
No.
And isn't that really the key to life, right? We need to. If Mars had water, it could sustain life. Is that what we're saying?
Well,
is that what we're trying to figure out?
I think the radiation that is bombarding the surface of Mars is still kind of a issue.
They got to have radiation blankets or something you can wear. The technology has to advance.
I mean, you think he's got the Boring Company for no reason? He knows that when he goes to Mars, he's going to need technology. He's going to need to have access to technology that's going to dig a hole underground for him to live in. The only way to protect yourself from the radiation that's bombarding the surface of Mars is to get, I don't know, it could be a mile of dirt between you and the radiation.
But if he figured it out, kudos to him.
Well, yeah, I'm not an anti-Elon
I know you
Musk.
like Elon.
I'm just saying he's an odd guy.
He is an odd guy, but you need society.
For a lot of people, they would not think he deserves to be Person of the Year. I don't give a shit, really.
He also, and maybe I was reading about him when I saw that, and I'm not sure if it was in the Time article, but he takes the complete opposite stance that I do on population, where he's basically saying, we don't have enough people, and it's a threat, an existential threat to our existence that we don't have enough people. And I'm like, that just seems the opposite of what our problem is.
Listen, I don't want to suggest that you're incorrect about the population situation, but I've heard his explanation of that. It makes sense to me. I mean, the deal is that it's funny for us to talk about population control, but you got to really be careful about that, right?
But and I know, and we're joking, and that's what we try to do. But the thing is,
why does your T-shirt say "Eugenics Forever"? Wait, that's not what it says. I'm making that up.
But the reality is that to keep this train going, you have to, of course, increase the population, and that really speaks to what we were talking about a minute ago with, the economy in this country and our consumption problem, if you want to call it that, and the way our economy is set up. The only reason you need people is to support that type of structure. And so it begs the question, is that the most viable and sustainable structure for humanity in the future? If we're really, this is the way I view it. If we're truly killing the planet, which maybe we are, maybe we aren't, maybe we're contributing to it, but I'm talking about all the discussion about climate change and everything else. If we're truly killing the planet and we're robbing it of its resources and we're trying to slow that down, wouldn't it be easier to do it with fewer people?
I don't know. I think that maybe sometimes when you tackle a question like that, it's the perspective that makes it hard to answer. So, is the real issue for me? The real issue is this true or not true? We have put so much carbon into the atmosphere that it's causing these very deleterious effects on the climate. If that is in fact true, and I think that's very easily determined, then the obvious answer is to start figuring out how to get carbon out of
no doubt, because we already did it. But I don't disagree with that. I think that is, but
the way to get carbon out is not to stop everything.
I get it, but the truth is, it's not just the amount of carbon that we have extrapolated and put into the atmosphere. It's the rate at which we have done it. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist, but if we take the same amount of carbon that we now know in the last 200 years that we've put into the atmosphere, and we didn't do it in that 200-year period, we did it over a 2,000-year period,
right?
Would the results be the same?
Well, yeah,
maybe. But would we have more time to figure out, hey, to slow it down before it got to this problem?
If blue was black, it wouldn't be blue. I mean, what can you say? I think that the fact is we have put that amount of carbon in, and I don't think the answer to this is somehow trying to figure out how to drastically reduce the amount of carbon that is entering into the atmosphere. The idea is to become carbon neutral. And so, yes, you could stop everything, all industry, all combustion engines, all
And of
everything.
course, I don't advocate that.
Yeah, no, and I don't either. And that would definitely cause a reduction in the amount of carbon going in, but it won't do shit to take the carbon that's already there out.
Right.
That shit is already there. We've
Exactly.
already crossed that line. And it doesn't make sense anyway. There's no actual practicality to that kind of thinking. So we need to figure out how to extract carbon, how to reduce carbon through technology.
I don't disagree.
Right?
But doesn't it make it harder, and I'm beating a dead horse here, doesn't it make it harder to do that when there are more and more people pumping more carbon out?
It does, but reducing the number of people is also not a viable answer.
I understand, and I'm not saying we should round people up and put them to the eternal sleep.
Oh my God.
But I was surprised to hear Elon say that. I was surprised to hear that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, let's assume he's thought it through. He's a lot smarter than I am, but
I'm glad you didn't say he's a lot smarter than I am, but just you are.
He's a lot smarter than me. I don't know if he's smarter than you.
Thank you.
I don't know that at all. He has a different way of looking at things, so you got to give him credit for that.
Of course.
I mean, the guy has figured out how to put his ass in space. That's a pretty big accomplishment. Should he be putting his ass in space? Should Bezos? Should any of these guys? That's a whole different question.
Well, that's not for anybody to say.
I
you know
guess.
what one man wants to do, what one person's dream is.
I mean, here's a mistake that we're making as a society. We're moving toward this way of dealing with problems, both real and imagined, or real and future, and we're getting to a mindset where, well, hey, we'll let the billionaires, take care of this. And that's a mistake.
I like how you say that, though, because you say that word a lot, the word let.
Yeah.
You say it with politicians. You say it with Trump. We let this happen. We let that happen. But I think and I always key in when you say it, because that has that assumes a lot in that word, that there's some type of mechanism that broke down. There was a failure in the control, that we let some failure happen, and the billionaires took over.
The failure is that instead of tackling huge engineering problems as Americans, right, as our society, as humans, whatever group you want to break it down into, we're all kind of like, hey, just let me do my consumer thing and let the billionaires take care of it. Right?
Yeah, but the billionaires are only billionaires because they created something that became extremely valuable. And then I think what your point is what did they do with their wealth ultimately to influence the progress of humanity?
Look, I don't have any problem with Elon Musk trying to solve a problem, or Bill Gates trying to end malaria, worldwide. But is that the smartest way for us to go about problem solving? I mean, is it wise to depend on one billionaire to eradicate malaria? I mean, wouldn't that be a problem better tackled by larger organizations, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, here's the way I think. And when you talk about, these billionaire creative guys like Elon Musk and Bezos, whatever the fuck his name is. I can never get his name right. They're like crazy, eccentric, talented people. And I think humans in general, this is where I was kind of going with this whole space thing, is we're creative people and we're curious people. We want to understand the world around us. And when you start asking questions and you think philosophically, the answers don't seem to be found around us. So we want to look, farther and farther out. And for a lot of guys, a lot of that takes them to a world beyond what is in front of them. To these guys, this crop of billionaires into outer space.
Well, I think the money has gotten so big for this select handful of people that we're talking about. We're talking about there's more than 6 or 7 of these people that we're talking about doing this. The money has gotten so big and that for them, I think that they start to kind of like, hey, I'm just not patient enough to wait for other situations. So, I mean, the problem is if we're not tackling the big problems and we're letting individuals go after that and spend the gigantic amount of wealth it would take to tackle a problem for one individual, how much accumulated wealth does that individual have to take on a problem like eradicating malaria?
But maybe that's not where their talents are aligned. I mean, if a guy like Elon Musk wants to build space rockets, that's where his passion is, and that's where he creatively, I'm just throwing this out there, is investing his mental capital. Well, how much, and also his actual money.
How much space shit do you think Elon's going to throw up into the orbit of the Earth? A lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The reason why he is, I mean, I think there's some goal of his to go to Mars or something. That's fine.
Which would be awesome.
Great. Go. Get the fuck out of here. Put him in a capsule and shoot his ass.
He's your guy.
Now. But here's the thing: as we let him acquire the means to put stuff into space, we lose control over things, right? Like, let's say he puts up 40,000 satellites between now and in a decade. A decade down the road, half of those go bad, but because he's doing this on his own and nobody has any regulatory or any control over it, if he decides to, let's say there's a change in technology, he decides to turn all of them off, right? We have no control over that.
Why do we get to have control?
Well, because then our other space goals could be, I mean, space trash sounds like a silly thing, but they've had to move the International Space Station like 6 times this year to avoid being punctured by space trash from mostly from Chinese satellites that they've managed to blow up. Russia just blew up a satellite and one of their own,
right,
and left the debris up there they had to move the fucking space station.
I know. But see, here's the interesting thing, and I get what you're saying, but Elon, he's here in the U.S. I don't know if he's a U.S. citizen. He's South African native, but nonetheless, his business entities are here in the U.S. So he's sourcing material, he's assembling these rockets in the U.S., and then he's launching them. So the natural control, if you will, would come from the United States. But then really, philosophically, you got to ask bigger questions like, who owns space? He could easily align with, say, Russia or China. They would welcome him for his technology. He would launch out of their skies, and then you get into space, and it's all of our same space. And I get what you're saying. Like, imagine this. He has 40 satellites he puts up there, and then, because he's noticeable, he starts communicating with the aliens.
Yeah.
The aliens can now reach human contact because of Elon's 40 satellites.
Did you have your athletic greens this morning?
I did, actually.
There's a product. Do you use
I take that. Okay. Yes, I do. Every day after training.
And with that, did you take any drugs that we should know about? So,
not that I can tell you.
Okay, so it's all good. That's all good. I mean, and one interesting thing about these billionaires that we're talking about, these are Americans for the most part.
Well, Branson is British. Elon is South African.
Western. Here's the thing.
Or is he Australian? I think he's British.
Who, Branson?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it British Airlines or Australian Airlines?
What is he? No, it's Virgin. But I think he's a British guy.
So anyway, most of those guys
is the opposite of Epstein. Not a virgin.
They will not align themselves with China or Russia no matter what we do, because for a guy like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos in if he was aligned with, say, China and under their thumb, for a guy like that, he's in the United States. He's working in the United States in the Western world. And there are laws. These are countries that operate on the rule of law. And so there are laws that protect his autonomy, right, to some degree. Yeah, we may regulate something he does, but if you're Jack Ma in China, who's easily as rich as or close to Bezos or Elon.
The Alibaba guy?
Yeah, the Alibaba guy. I mean, you're on top of the world. You've got all the money you could possibly. But then you get a phone call one day and it's all over. You're gone. Your shit's gone, and you're done.
But that speaks to what you said about letting and controlling. So the Chinese government could tell Jack Ma, "Hey, you're not going to build this rocket. You're not going to launch it."
Right.
And they could control that coming out of the landmass known as China.
Right.
But he could launch it from anywhere else and then be up in space. And once you're there, you're there. You know what I mean? It's called the International Space Station for a reason, because once you get into space, all bets are off.
I get it. I mean, and ideally, that's how we would look at it. So, I mean, I think my only thought about space was that right now we are allowing the space around the Earth to become extremely littered with shit. And
I know.
Although it's not much of a problem right now, it can become a problem, and it's just symptomatic of how we do things, right?
It is, exactly. And where do you draw the line? Like, do we need all these satellites so we can have high definition TV and be entertained in our miserable lives and watch sporting events? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Well, we need large ring planets up there. It's a great science fiction genre. There's books called the Ring books, and you have to look. What is it? Elysium, I think, is the name of the science fiction movie where 20% of the Earth's the richest 20% of the Earth's population moves up to a ring planet off Earth.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, isn't there like a movie about that in the early 2000s?
Yeah, I think it's called Elysium.
Oh, there's like 10 of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
What's the dude? He's a famous actor. It's like,
yeah, it's Damon or one of those guys.
It's fuck. What is his name? Is it John Cusack?
John Cusack. Yeah, that could be Elysium too.
I don't think that's the name of it, but he's, there's like the Russian billionaire, and everyone's got like a golden ticket to get on this spacecraft.
Yeah, and then
restart society.
Get up there because there's some med tech up there that's not available on Earth, and so these guys go up there to try to access that. And there's a huge military force up there that they think could keep everybody off. But I mean, it's all great science fiction stuff. But I mean, is that our plan B to get off the planet?
I don't know. But think about this, and you're right in the sense. And when we talk all the way down at the grassroots, local level politics that affect our day-to-day lives, I like when we talk about things like, what are the biggest problems that we need to solve right now? And again, so lately we've been talking about the Texas abortion thing. Yeah. Is that really the major fucking issue that we need to solve? And of course,
that's a great question, I think.
And the answer is no. And when it comes to, say,
you better expound on that a little bit.
The answer is no. That's not something that needs to be addressed. That's not a problem of society that humans, by way of elected officials and people in the courts, need to stop other humans from having babies. That's just fucking ridiculous.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, so that's kind of a mixed up thing right there. So when you said that, I thought you were saying, hey, the problems associated with Mississippi and Texas, for instance, trying to, overturn Roe versus Wade or, whatever, get around it or game the system, that's not important enough to stop everything and deal with.
No, it is. And we'll get to that in a second. But what I really mean is take these two kind of unrelated topics, space exploration and abortion issues here in the United States. They're so diametrically opposed.
Is this going to end up with space abortions? Is that where you're going?
It might. To get an abortion, listen, it's going to go all the way back. We have found water on Mars. So you can go and live there.
You can wash up.
You can wash up
after the
and you can have your abortion safely. And then Elon will build the boring tunnel and bring you back to Earth safely.
I don't know if this is a subject that we should. I mean, we are making.
Let me try to articulate in this way.
Let me shut up.
What I'm really saying is, it makes more sense to me, anyway, in my brain, logically, why people would want to continue with space exploration and understand the unknown worlds around us outside of this planet. That, to me, whether they're billionaires or not, I don't blame the billionaires for wanting to do that. It's natural to me to have that curiosity. On the other hand, I think the flaws are with the humans down here in Texas and Mississippi who are sitting by their fire at night and saying, you know what we really need to fix in this society?
Yeah.
There's fucking abortions that are happening, and that's against Jesus, and we need to put a stop to that right now. That, to me, is fucking ridiculous.
Well, should Bezos or Elon Musk or the guy from Oracle or whoever else, names I don't actually know, should they not be channeling their massive resources to right something as wrong as the move by Republicans and conservatives in this country to eliminate abortion, to stop people from making that choice on their own? Should that not be it would not the fight against that, the resources that they could provide to that fight, would that not be more important than fucktard going up in space?
And I think that's an interesting way to look at it. So in other words, you're saying, hey, you've got all this time, money, and resources and talent that you are directing towards, in this case, space exploration. But if you could only break off a fraction of that and apply it in whatever ways you can to solve these other problems.
And that was the next thing I was going to say. Most likely for Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, the amount of resources it would take to effectively fight the fight to correct this abortion nonsense coming from the conservatives would only be a fraction of what they're going to spend on
How can they do it, though?
Why are they not doing it?
Well, what can they do?
They can provide the money to fight the political fight to stop this.
But where do you literally take that money and invest it to where it's a tool to fight that fight?
Go to the state governments that are in the 20 some odd states that are going to do this. And you also you take that money to the fucking Senate right now and use it to.
How do you use it, though?
You get them to take up voting rights.
Are you talking about literally? I don't think this is what you're saying. Buy out, pay them off?
Listen, it takes, I don't care what the fight is. There are no political fights that get won on good intentions. It's
I understand.
all money, right? It's all resources.
But the mechanism is like, if you're Elon and you break off $1 billion, maybe that's not enough. I don't know.
You take $1 billion and fund political campaigns in 20 states for Democratic state legislators to go and change the state laws and stop making these anti-abortion laws in backwaters like Texas and Mississippi.
And I'm there with you, and I'm playing devil's advocate. Okay. But the truth is,
I want a chance to explain this.
Well, that can be done now anyway without the money, because the truth is, we're not really, like I said, paying off the senators and the elected officials to vote a certain way or whatever. They have the power now. They have the voices now. They have the votes now to affect change. Why aren't they doing it?
The billionaires?
No, the people within those states. In other words, you take $1 billion, you dump it into Texas. Let's pick Texas.
Yeah.
You dump it into Texas. How does that get you from A to B? Because what you're basically saying is you need this grassroots campaign, you need messaging, you need to convince people that this is a bad idea, and you need to undo this flawed logic. That's what we're saying. But it's really just comes down to voices speaking up and saying this is what needs to change.
Right, but to hear those voices, you need money.
How would they hear them, though?
Well, because political campaigns, elections, people running for office, unseating Republicans, right, in states that are passing anti-abortion laws so that you can turn that state legislature blue, right? That takes money. That's all it takes.
I know. I wish there was a way you could affect change without turning it blue. It's my least favorite color on the color spectrum.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I got bad news for you. The other party that is involved, overturning Roe versus Wade, stopping abortion, stopping people from having the right to get an abortion, has been their political agenda for 20, 50 years, actually, right? And so, yeah, there's no way to stop that except to replace those Republicans that are in state governments. And as far as I'm concerned, replace the Republicans that are in federal seats, right? Look, folks, I don't care whether your thing is, are you as passionate about this anti-abortion stuff as I am? Why do I even care? I'm not having a baby anytime soon. I'm not going to need an abortion. But it's just the right and wrong of it, right? And so whether your thing is you want to fix the abortion situation, you want voting rights to be reinstated in these red states, you want a federal, voting rights bill, we need to concentrate resources in the right places, in the political races, in the state races, in the Senate races, to put people in those positions that will do those things, right? And I know that Travis is not going to like this, but if you want gun laws changed, then you have to provide the resources to put people into political seats that will push that agenda. And that's
an interesting tee up, because you're not necessarily going to die on the hill of gun control. I know that. And we don't talk a lot about California politics because, the supermajority of the Democrats in California really has fucked things up too.
Yeah.
But if an idea is bad, if the logic is bad, then that should carry through no matter where you apply it. And this fucking guy Newsom is now saying, I'm sure you've seen this story, where he's saying if the Supreme Court's not going to intervene with Texas, we're going to apply the same logic with gun control, and we're going to give the citizens of California legal standing to sue people.
Right. Exactly.
Which is ridiculous. And it's ridiculous because, of course it is.
Well, okay,
it has to be.
If we are going to let Texas do that with abortion, which we are.
And we shouldn't.
But we are.
Well, it's we in the sense of not you and I, but what's happening in this country is that currently it's not stopping. So yes.
Well,
but that's not the answer. Is it needs to be stopped.
Do I think Newsom even cares about gun control? I don't.
Oh, he does.
He's an opportunistic politician, right?
Yes.
So there's no downside for him on this. Would they do it? I think this is a way for the most powerfully Democratic state in the union, for the Democrats in that state to make a point to the brain dead conservatives that are allowing this to happen, and the brain dead motherfuckers on the Supreme Court that are letting this happen.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's important, because that is the messaging that resonated with me. And if that is, listen, number one, I don't think that Newsom could even get that through. I'm no scholar, I'm no constitutional scholar, but I don't think that could happen.
In this state?
Yeah, because gun control, again, it's nuanced, but that's in the Constitution and abortion isn't. So that would be a tough one, I think, to just snap your fingers and apply. But the truth is...
Right to privacy is in the Constitution.
Yeah, we need to have more privacy.
Well, Roe versus Wade and abortion rights is a constitutional issue. And that's been proven because the fucking Supreme Court keeps sticking their nose into it instead of letting the lower courts make the correct decisions that they always make.
But the truth is, go all the way back to Texas.
Yeah.
What's happening there should not be allowed to happen because it's wrong.
That mechanism.
Bounty so if it's wrong there, it's wrong to apply it with gun control in California. It's just wrong.
Right. But this is the...
No, it's wrong.
Okay, I got you. I agree. So let's see. My hope is not that Newsom manages to pass, draconian gun control laws in California. My hope is that this somehow makes a point with people and the legislature or somebody steps in and says, okay, enough of this. We cannot allow
that
Texas
would be a good result.
Yeah, we cannot allow them to use this. We need to outlaw this mechanism one way or the other, however you do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. So,
and and I'm not hearing anything that is the intended purpose, but if that's
the intended purpose of Newsom doing that is to demonstrate how wrong that is in Texas. It's wrong for abortion, but if you're going to allow it, to be used against abortion, then you are also going to end up allowing it to be used against guns.
And if he follows through on that, that is, in my opinion, a domino of bad shit that's going to happen after that.
Yeah, well,
because of flawed logic.
That won't be his fault.
It will be his fault.
That will be their fault. That will be these idiots in the Supreme
Court. We're going
to
assign him a little fault.
We'll give him a little fault. I mean, so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't know yet where the Supreme Court, they have managed to I don't know.
You think this is political theater? Like a good movie? This is the, what do you call it, the climax?
Warren put a bill up today. You hear about this?
No. What is this bill?
He's going to add more people to the Supreme Court.
That's bad, too. Come on. Why can't we get this done with good, solid thinking and not apply bad logic?
Because the Republican Party and in the Republicans in general, the conservatives, they are fine to do whatever batshit crazy shit like this law in Texas, right? And say, well, we're going to do it, and because it's justified, because this is abortion, and blah blah blah, right? And then they're not going to want to accept the consequences for it.
I know, but listen, this bears
because conservatives don't want anybody to have consequences for anything. They want to do their right-wing conservative shit with no consequences, and that's just not how it works.
But listen, this bears repeating. I said this to you last week with the Supreme Court. If you put more justices on the court, let's say this was done sometime in the past, and right now we had this abortion issue, and instead of 9 justices, we had, pick a number, 15, and they were mostly conservative, you would never get it through. I mean, right now we're talking about convincing, I'm going to go with you on this. We're going to talk about the extreme right conservative justices and the extreme left. Maybe there's
3 to 5, right? Or 4 to 5.
Yes.
6 to 3.
And let's say that there's extremes on both ends, and there's a couple in the middle that can make sound judgment with, and make good decisions based on sound law and whatever evidence is in front of them. Let's assume for a second that can happen. If you expand the court and now there's 15 people to convince, you've got extreme majorities on the other side. Will you ever strike a balance in the middle? And we've talked about the lifespan, serving as a justice for life, and I just think that is bad policy.
I'm going to let you off the hook here. I'm not particularly favoring expanding the court right now. I think other avenues should be pursued regarding term limits for justices and things like that, because I don't care what the ratio is or what the number is, the same thing can happen, right? So if you have 15 justices on there, it can be, it could be 5 to 10, and that would be an insurmountable amount of conservatives.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. So I agree with all that. I think that the problem is that we're looking at a very politically slanted Supreme Court for a very long period of time. In the short term, we have the things like this abortion adjudication they're working on right now, both Texas and Mississippi, or their lack of doing what they should do. That's one thing in the short term. But in the long term, we need to, do we want this conservative majority to exist for 50 years? Is that something we want? And we probably don't want that. Even if you're conservative, you probably don't really want that. And even if you're conservative now and you're dead down the road, you got to think about the long-term consequences. Where do we want the highest court in the land? What kind of decisions do we want to see come out of that court? And in the very short term here, we're seeing, I was hoping for the best, that the conservative justices that have been there as a result of Trump and the shenanigans from the Senate during the last year of Obama's presidency, that they would moderate and we would be able to live with it, because, hey, we've had a long time of a liberally slanted court. So is it that terrible that we might have a time with a conservative slanted court? Unfortunately, they have already demonstrated, just in this Roe versus Wade situation, just in the Mississippi and the Texas, that they are too politically corrupted already. These people are way too dogmatic and way too conservative, and they're not going to make moderated decisions. And so,
well, let's hope that's
now
wrong.
We have to deal with that.
We don't know yet, right? Because these things aren't final. Let me throw this out.
You know my motto: the best indication
yeah, I understand.
Future behavior is past the performance. Go ahead.
Let me throw this at you. You said something last week that, I assumed I knew, but it's an interesting take. And of course, the Supreme Court's only purpose is to rule on constitutional law. What is constitutional and what is not? But am I correct that they're responding, they're reactionary, right? So they react to and respond to cases that are brought before them that the sole purpose is to prove or disprove whether or not that particular case is constitutional. So what if the court in this country, hypothetically, I'm just throwing this out there, was more offensive, and as times advance and we modernize, they apply this 200 and almost 50-year-old document, and they look at modern times and say, what is happening in the world right now legally in this country that is against or aligned with the Constitution?
Yeah.
And therefore, the idea is, I'm throwing this out there, that you would get on the front side of things like this in Texas and be able to affect change before bad shit happens. Well, and specifically, let me just sum it up by saying this. What seems to me like what's happening is the Supreme Court, maybe for political reasons, I'll give you that, I don't know yet, maybe for political reasons, they're looking for loopholes as a way to remove themselves. Like, wasn't it Kavanaugh who said we could remain neutral? They're looking for political loopholes to not have to make a decision for whatever reason, rather than being on the offense and saying, hey, what is happening here is in direct conflict with the laws of the land, and therefore it can't happen. That's a mouthful. Does it make sense?
Yeah, well, I think I know what you're saying, but so the way I see it is that when the Texas law went into effect, the Supreme Court, so that was, the Texas law is in direct conflict with the Roe versus Wade decision, 50 years of settled law and stare decisis, right? Which is where, hey, you don't take up the criteria to take up a case that involves settled law, past decisions by the Supreme Court. That's a really high bar. They not only did they not show in any way that bar had been met by the people bringing the Texas, because the Texas law had been struck down by the circuit court.
But so let me interject here. Is that this internal disease, the stomach disease that you just mentioned, stare decisis, is that essentially what they're saying is, hey, we're not going to hear it because it's considered settled law, therefore Texas can do whatever you want? No,
they heard it. They took it up.
For Texas?
No, they haven't. So, okay, let me go back.
Yes. Are you going back or are you circling back?
No, let me circle back.
Okay.
Always circle back. So in Texas, okay, they passed a law that the court should have ruled was unconstitutional, okay, because that law circumvents Roe versus Wade, which establishes the right for women to choose to have an abortion prior to 28
unencumbered
weeks.
By lawsuits brought against you.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
So they did not take it up, and they have not taken it up, and they did not instruct that state to
right.
cease.
That's what I mean. They've abstained basically.
Yeah. So the lower court already ruled that it was not, that it was illegal, and so when that state decides not to comply with the court ruling, then it goes to the Supreme Court, and they have refused to weigh in on it.
That's my point.
And by so doing, they have allowed it to happen.
So what if, like I was trying to say,
that's because they're corrupt and they want it to happen.
Listen, you can't. I understand why you say that.
I can understand the basic principles of what the Supreme Court's supposed to do, but they don't seem to be able to.
But the truth is,
we're not taking this up.
Right, and that's, to me, is the real issue. And again, maybe for political reasons, maybe for corrupt reasons,
maybe for religious reasons.
Maybe for all those reasons. But the truth is, if I'm understanding this correctly, they've not heard this case.
Well, yeah, that is true. But along with that, they have not taken the one step they could take and tell Texas that you cannot allow this law to be in effect.
And they could have.
They could have. They didn't have to hear the case.
So, what's
they
that?
They could have just issued an injunction and said, hey, this law is unconstitutional. We've already decided this.
So you know how we talked a lot about during the Trump era that he, especially early on, he'd make these executive decisions like travel bans or whatever, and then you'd hear from these random obscure federal judges that could stop that somehow. You know, those stories that we talked about?
Yeah.
How come there's no federal judge somewhere else in some other circuit that can't just do the same thing with Texas and put a stop to it and say that's illegal?
Because Texas, they brought this to the Supreme Court.
But the court didn't hear it.
They have defied the court. There is a court that can stop it. They have stopped it, and Texas is defying. And when Texas defies the lower court ruling, the Supreme Court has to step in and make it stop, and they're not doing that.
I understand that, but why is that the only mechanism? Where are these other courts that we've heard about all during the Trump era that would stop crazy shit from happening?
Because the court that stopped the travel ban, right? Whoever the people were that were against the travel ban did not feel they were going to overturn it in the Supreme Court. So that was the last word. Okay, travel ban's overturned. Supreme Court is not taking it, and that's it. If you defy the lower court, then you're in contempt. So whoever you are that is doing that, right? So
I just wish there was a way to, for lack of a better way of describing it, force the court to hear it. Because see, in this, in my opinion, this is allowing them to, get off scot-free and not show their hand. Like force Kavanaugh, force Barrett to make a decision, because we would know at that point, right? We would know which justices ruled in favor and which ones would rule against it.
And I'm just gonna backpedal a little bit here because it gets confusing without having all this in front of me. The Mississippi case that was heard by the Supreme Court, we heard oral arguments and is now under, I don't even know what they call it, but we're supposed to hear the decision come next June.
Yeah.
That law was stopped by a lower court. So that's 100% I'm sure about that.
How is that? That's what I'm trying to get at.
I don't think it's the same in Texas.
Okay.
That case was the Mississippi passed that law, and the circuit court said, yeah, that's illegal. You cannot do that, and because it's in conflict with Roe versus Wade.
In other words, what they tried to do was a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade versus what Texas did was provide some legal standing to the citizens that got you to the same end result, but a different way.
Right, and the Justice Department asked the Supreme Court.
How dumb of Mississippi. You should just copy Texas.
Well, this is a multi-front coordinated strategic situation. I mean, it's not happening in Mississippi and Texas, separately, right? This is all coordinated by the Republican Party.
And that's what you keep saying.
By the RNC. This is their national strategy. Right, they're not hiding it. It's all over there. I mean, you can find that substantiation anywhere you want. But at any rate, I think the Texas thing gets confusing because of the way they did that. There's no direct attack on Roe versus Wade. The question is this Texas mechanism. Let's just call it the vigilante aspect of the Texas law. And that is not something the Supreme Court has opted to hear. So there is no lower court ruling on whether Texas can stop abortions at 6 weeks. Then there's no lower court ruling on their state law that they can empower citizens and pay a bounty and have the vigilante aspect of this. So, sorry, I think I got those things confused. So there's definitely a lower court case involved in Mississippi, and that is why the Supreme Court has to hear that, because it went to the Supreme Court to make a ruling. And because of that, they heard oral arguments regarding the legality of Roe versus Wade.
Go all the way back to the billionaire intervention concept that you were talking about. The other thing that really kind of just boggles my mind is ultimately, from what I'm seeing, there has not been an uprising from the citizens in Texas or in Mississippi. And like I always say, of course, with COVID and restrictions and everything else, there are more of us than there are of them. There are always more of the people than there are of the authority. Yeah. So is this here's my question. Is this representative of the will of the people in those states? Is that why you're not seeing, and yes, there are people protesting, but is that why you're not seeing a complete, people demanding that this be changed? And so the second
what you thought was going to happen.
Yes, and exactly what I said. Yeah. And would the influence of billionaires really do anything? Because if it dumped the money into those states, would they just say, hey, thanks for the money, but this is what we want anyway?
Who knows what the majority of people in Texas and Mississippi want? That's not really the question, right? These are state laws that are being promulgated in direct conflict with federal,
I understand,
constitutional Supreme Court decisions, right?
But if the people in those states didn't want this, then you would think they could affect change.
No, here's the problem. There is a majority of people that do not want this, but they're not necessarily located in those two states.
Right, I agree with that. Right. And so this really goes back to my point.
But states do not have the right to
I agree with you. Yes.
Okay.
I'm with you.
All right.
But is it fair to suggest then, are we suggesting and implying that the citizens within those states are for this?
This is a constitutional
right. I understand.
Right. Well, then it has nothing to do with the states.
It does, because I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree that it can and should be changed without the help of those states, without the commitment of the people within those states to do it. I totally get that. And I do believe that the majority of the citizens of this country are opposed to this, regardless of what the people in those states think.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get a pulse on what the fuck is happening locally. Are these people for this? Is that why you're not seeing?
They may be. They may be.
Literally,
look at the two states we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to continually bash people that live in these southern states, but this is who they are, and they will take this right away on a national basis based on their personal religious nonsense, and that's a problem. The right to an abortion was established in Roe versus Wade 50 years ago, reestablished 20 years ago in the Casey challenge.
Casey Kasem?
Yeah, whatever. I just, I don't know the details on that case, but it came and went. And so you have two situations where the right to an abortion, the constitutional right to an abortion, was reaffirmed by the Supreme Court twice. The fact that they have taken it up now in conflict with stare decisis, which is the legal doctrine that they are supposed to be guided by, and that can only be an indication of one thing: that there are enough people on that court now that, even in view of the two times it's been challenged and upheld and stare decisis, because of their own personal views on abortion, have decided to hear the case. The mere fact that they decided to take this case up instead of saying, hey, we're not hearing this case, this is established law, stare decisis, we're not hearing this. But because they did decide, that tells you everything you need to know about the current makeup of this court.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm really trying to get to the root of how you get this changed. In other words, I'd be willing to bet that the people in Texas,
I gotcha,
if you tried to take away guns, would say that's not constitutional, and they would rely on what they believe is their constitutional right. But similarly, we've just been discussing, as we have for the last several weeks, that the abortion rights have
now Texas has figured out a way to game the system.
I know that. So what the citizens really need is a re-education.
Who? Texans?
Yes.
Texas and educate in the same sentence? Come on. Let's get real. Let's not be ridiculous.
Jesus. Which is really the problem, isn't it?
Well, So you asked me before, what about that billionaire thing? How could they affect this, right? So let me give you an example of a billionaire, a substantial billionaire, who is spending a substantial part of his fortune. And you're going to hate this, but Mike Bloomberg is spending a substantial part of his amassed wealth to support political organizations that will put candidates in local races and support them in a manner that will allow them to win those races and that will overturn gun laws.
We should tax the shit out of him.
State. But
I am in favor now of wealth confiscation.
Well, I mean, I got a couple questions. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, so it's some organizations called neighborhoods or something. Anyway, that's how a billionaire can use that, at least some portion. I don't think he's devoting every penny he has so that he's living in a homeless shelter somewhere, but he is devoting some portion of his.
It'll be a small shelter if he needs one.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how it works. I mean, Mike Bloomfield, not particularly Bloomberg, yeah, not particularly a fan of him being the president of the United
Jewish
States.
All of a sudden.
So, what is it, Bloomberg, right?
Yeah.
So, Mike Bloomberg is using part of his amassed wealth, and he's a billionaire on a scale of all these other guys we've been talking about, to fight this battle. Which is, I think you got to say that gun control is definitely a Democratic, goal, right? And so, I mean, I wish he was using that money not to fight for gun control, but to fight for national voting rights bill.
And that's what I was trying to get at with the space conversation and abortion rights or whatever it is. It's almost as if we could somehow moderate politics in this country where each side could knock off the board something that the other side really wants to get through and really kind of come down to the core of what's important. In 2021, almost 2022, if you can believe it, that's what we're up against, that the single most important thing is abortion for the right. Of course that's not. And gun control on the left, of course it's not. So I'm imagining kind of like this arbiter somehow in this political gamesmanship.
It's called a dictator. That's what you're.
But which I would volunteer to be. I would accept that position, and I would gladly step down after,
of course,
3,000 successful terms.
Oh, that's where the rubber hits
But you
the
have a
road
list
on
of the
term
shit
limits.
on the right and a list of the shit on the left, and each side gets 3 or 4 vetoes.
Well, that's because you and I have a bunch of common sense that's not involved in the real world of politics, right? So for me, I am no fan of chucking the system or chucking.
You like the
having
system.
revolution. Well, I mean, for my money, the American two-party political system, the American political system, it works good.
You do realize that you either have to accept a third party or we're going to lose the union. You know that.
You can have a third party. I'm okay with that. It just, I don't see it yet, right?
It's coming.
Well, it's fine, but where is it?
In 2024.
Come on, Yang.
It'll
go.
be here in 24.
Well, we'll see. It may be the Ford party, or it could be something else.
It's got to be. This is not working. This two-party system is not working.
It won't be the Libertarians.
Is it going to be Yang?
Well, it could, in the sense that, do I know the answer to that? I don't. But do I have a strong opinion about that? I don't think it'll be him. But I'm encouraged to see people like him put out ideas for alternative perspectives on how the political system should perform.
Right.
He's not anti-right or anti-left. He's pro-fix the fucking problems, right?
And that's all good, but it has to be pro-fix the problems with less government intervention. Government is the problem, like I always say. Well, so any solution that requires the government to be the one to solve it, that's the problem.
You want the third party to be some reworked version of the Republican Party.
No, I don't.
That's more libertarian. That's not going to happen. That's not going to solve the problem.
It will solve the problem because here's the way you do it. There's too much minutia. There's too much bullshit. You gotta strip it all away. Either strip it all away or start from the ground up. and say, what is it that's really important? Does this need to be a law? Does this need to be a thing? No, of course not.
When you say strip it all away and start from the ground up, let me interject that neither of us are speaking of some type of seditious revolution that would overthrow the government.
That's what you were telling me before we came on today.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, it's not?
Hello, CIA.
I'm not saying overthrow the government. I'm saying government needs to unpackage everything that we've built up over the last few hundred years. You can't just keep adding it. You keep painting over the same, old structure. The paint's going to peel.
Well, I mean, maybe
sand it down.
But listen, you have to work within the existing system and make the changes from within.
Why do we have to do that?
Well, because the alternative is chaos, like you're talking about.
Well, but you have. When we go to Mars, when Elon takes us to Mars and we start a new civilization, do you think we're going to take everything that we know now and build upon that? No, we're going to say, well, that was fucked up for the last couple hundred years. Let's do something better.
I think that we will take our accumulated knowledge and build off better on it. I mean, here's the thing. Go back, but humans have been grouping up in cities for 10,000 years or something, and we almost know nothing about anything that happened 2,000 years ago. And
what do you mean? We know a lot.
Well, before 2000, we know about some supposed nonsense that happened 2021 years ago, but we don't really know a lot of details about prior human civilizations, Mayans, Incans, Sumerians, even the Egyptians. We barely know. Well,
here's what we know. We know that groups of people, all those, periods of time that you cited, were living in a way that they wanted to live, and ultimately their demise came from another group of people that wanted to force their beliefs on them, and it all ended in catastrophe.
Well, possibly, and we also saw, gains and losses in knowledge over all of that history that now do not necessarily have to happen. Accumulated knowledge can now be preserved for much longer periods of time, and we can only hope that it is. I mean, if we end up bombing ourselves into the Stone Age, that's a different story. But assuming that doesn't happen, we take the accumulated knowledge and I somehow, maybe if I have any faith, it's that we do learn from things, right? And the fact that some people don't agree with everything I say, I don't care. I'm not losing any sleep over that. There's a whole bunch of people.
As am I.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of people that agree with everything I say. And I'm sure the same for you, too. They're all at some libertarian getaways. But I mean, these are just ideas. It's not about how many people. It's not about numbers. It's about ideas, and how do we go forward in our future history here and use the knowledge that we've accumulated. I'm fairly optimistic that it can be done. I think climate change is going to be a catalyst to crystallize some of these ideas, because that's what happens when you put pressure on human beings, especially pressure regarding survival issues, right?
Right.
So I think that, hey, is there a reason why we didn't develop green technology in the 60s? Yeah, because non-green technology cost nothing.
Yeah, it was cheap. It was fast.
Right. And
it was available.
That's how it goes, right?
Right.
That's not going to be the case. I mean, gas is $5 a gallon damn near in California.
I know.
And as California goes, so does the rest of the country. And so that alone is going to spur the change, right? I mean, and I don't care. I don't discount greed as a motivating factor, right? But is it greed or is it survival? I mean, things that weren't reasonable before will become reasonable. And we have to just be careful to not let political perspectives get in the way of things like making good changes that will benefit the climate going forward so we can survive. It's not political. You just have to let go of some of that. And so, Travis, I'm happy to see a third party. I am happy to hear someone like Yang talk about a third party, that is not one side of this established aisle or the other. if you're going to have, maybe that will be the catalyst that lets people, if people from both sides of the aisle flood into this center channel, this forward party or this third party that you think about, it's going to be great. Are they going to drag your outmoded ideas of what needs to come along with it, the smaller government or less taxes? Who knows? But here's what I would be. It's going to be different.
I would be satisfied if, and this is what I like about the third party movement, and the idea is, I would be satisfied, much like what you and I talk about on the podcast, which is idea-based momentum, tackling problems as they exist, independent of party ideology. Yeah. That is the problem. Well, when you're in a party, you're expected to join the party and move along and swim, with the stream of the ideas in your party. It's that irrational groupthink.
As you've stated so many times, it's things like there are people down in the South that think the Confederate States of America still exist. I mean, there's just stupid shit going on. It's a big country, and that's what
you say. There's nothing in the middle.
Well, there's no people in the middle. So, I mean, I think that we have to understand that there are diverse points of view spread around the country. Some of them are diverse points of view, like anybody that thinks it's a good idea to fly the Confederate flag. That's just stupid, backward thinking. But we need to understand that not everybody is ever going to think alike. So we're going to take all of these diverse opinions. We're not going to split the country up. Hello. We're not.
We might end up there.
Well, I mean, we might grow lips and fly around like chickens.
We're going to end up there if we don't get this third party off the ground.
Well, I mean, let's look at the Yang Gang and see what they're proposing.
Why do we think? I mean, I just read the other day the Libertarian Party is 50 years old. Just had its 50th birthday.
Yeah, because they're slow learners.
Well, I was going to say, they don't have a lot to show for that. But why are we going to put all of our faith in Yang, who's kind of new, Johnny-come-lately? Your third party is going to be the one that fixes all of our problems?
I'm saying give him a chance, right? Give him his ideas, because what little I've heard about it up to this point sounds like ideas that are in the right direction, that are going in the direction we've talked about so many times. Much less partisan on a liberal conservative type basis. Those are just titles. They're not even real things.
Let me do you one further. Go back to my population
control.
I don't want to say control. You said control, but population issues.
Yeah.
Don't you think it's easier to govern? And I like your point about diversity of opinions, and it comes down to what do you do with those opinions and how do you make change and apply it to law?
Yeah.
Isn't it harder to do that when you have more people than less people?
It's harder to do that when you have allowed your...
You do committee work. You'd rather have a small committee than a large committee, right?
Well,
why is that?
Well, let me say this about why I think it's so hard, and I don't think it has anything to do with the amount of people. I think that we have allowed our political process to become entrenched in money and special interest, and that is probably somewhat prevalent on both sides of the aisle. I'm not a big fan of moral equivalencies like that, but I mean, the truth is probably the truth. We need to fix that on both sides. So when I talk about points of view or political ideas that are not going to reinforce those problematic political divisions, then that's what I'm talking about, right? And so, is it the evil of money? Is it big corporations? Is it evil billionaires? It's none of those things. Those are all just labels. We just need to look at different situations. When you ask questions like, why are we not handling the issue of voter rights, right? Why are we fixated on abortion? Why is one half of the political system in this country fixated on taking rights away from half the human beings in the country?
Isn't that kind of analogous to the abortion issue, which I would be willing to bet that the majority of people in the country as a whole are opposed to restricting voting rights? However, the people within these particular states, maybe the majority of the people in those states are not. So it's kind of the same as the abortion issue. How do you Do we need to apply billionaire money to that too?
Okay. I think when we see state issues, when we see issues involving states' rights to make laws, then we need to make sure that we do not allow that to happen when those laws that those states are making are obviously discriminatory against other marginalized sections of the population, whether that be black people, whether that be minorities in general, whether that be women and abortion rights. When states decide to make laws that take rights away from these other populations that are not part of the ruling white people in that state, then we need federal intervention to stop them from doing that.
And the truth is, the only way you do that is you have it one way or the other. And this is what I always talk about, states' rights versus, what is it, federalism?
No,
is that
you
what it's
don't have
called?
to have it all one way or the other.
But isn't it interesting though that all of our problems arise from that in this country because we have both, and I don't even pretend to understand it.
Well,
and honestly, I go both ways. Yesterday I could be for states' rights, and tomorrow I could be for one law of the land under the federal government.
Travis, when you grow up, you're going to solidify some of your opinions. Here, let me give you an example. Up until recently, we had a law in effect that because the country had recognized that a particular group of southern states post-Civil War, post-Jim Crow, were formulating voting laws that were prohibiting black people from voting. Poll tax, you have to guess the amount of jelly beans in a fucking bar at the polling, in a fucking jar at the polling place. I mean, ridiculous horse shit.
Have you ever done one of those?
Well, I've never been asked to do it to vote. I think I
How
did
many
it
jelly beans can you fit in a jar?
That's a good question.
Wasn't Reagan a jelly bean guy?
He was. Are you trying to get me off track?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So here's what I'm trying to say. We had laws in effect to control voting rights to control southern states that we knew were going to be prone to enact discriminatory voting laws. And
when you say we, you mean
the United States of America.
Federal government.
Yeah. And that was in effect, okay? Part of the Republican strategy to increase the amount of times Republicans win elections was to eliminate that law, to try to convince people that, hey, enough time had passed since the Jim Crow era that these laws were not needed. Well, that was wrong. That was a mistake. They're still needed. They will most likely always be needed. And why would you change something that was working in the first place? So here's the thing. The Republicans changed them, right? They got control of the Senate and they changed it. And then they put in a Republican president who then decimated the Justice Department, almost eliminating their authority on a national basis. That's very dangerous, right? So all of the bullshit that you saw the Trump guys go through, Bill Barr and all the rest of it, because the only way that you can control problems like states passing laws that are discriminatory to marginalized sections of the population is for the Justice Department to have some kind of control over that. They systematically eroded that control.
But you just went deeper into the weeds. You painted an even more dystopian picture of the problem, which is you had this control on a federal level that ultimately can also be dismantled if you have somebody go in there that takes apart the Justice Department. So how do you keep it all intact?
Well, I mean, this is where I'm just going to have to blame the American people. I mean, I can only say that as they sat back for fucking 4.5 years, or count the time before he was elected, and watched Trump dismantle the Justice Department without rising up and demanding that it stop.
And this is what I think, and I've said this before, and I think you disagree with me, but I ultimately believe, again, you talk about and that trickles down into how people cast their vote. I believe people ultimately vote for the policies that affect them or benefit them. So there must be enough positive shit for people to vote for, pick a candidate, Trump in the last 4 years, that they said, I'll take the good with the bad because I like this, that
Yeah.
they're willing to let that, go back to your word, they're willing to let that happen.
You cannot allow, okay, I'll use the different word.
It's the same thing.
So what you're talking about is minority control, right? And that is a problem. So the rhetoric from the right that's been pervasive for the last 10 years has been that somehow it's oppressive for the people of the United States to wish to have mechanisms in place that will prevent small minorities, especially in places like the South, from imposing their will on the majority of the people, especially when it's going to cause very serious damage to those segments of the people, right?
Yeah, but the people are free to cast their votes in any way that they choose. You cited a lot your Mexican gardener, right? Who was a Trump guy.
Yeah.
Which didn't make any sense to you because Trump hates those people. And I think your guy was
he's a one issue guy.
He was a one issue guy.
He's a Catholic.
And I don't think that that's so different from how a lot of people cast their vote. That's just what I believe is that
I think one issue voters are something that always have to be taken into consideration, right? But I mean,
and when you talk about minority of people casting votes, the whole other element here too is popular vote versus electoral college.
I'm okay with the electoral college.
I know you've stated that you like that process.
Well, I mean,
but the reality is you end up having a minority, if you want to call it that, opinion on who ultimately gets the job of president.
A minority opinion.
Yeah,
I guess. I mean, when the popular
it can,
vote,
I should say, it doesn't always.
Yeah, I mean, these are just things that we have to. You know, I've said this before on the podcast, and I think it's a concept that I am afraid is almost gone. But let me just say this: that one of the things that makes the American government institutions work is forbearance. Right. And so I'm just going to say it and not try to explain it. It's in a lot of the language and a lot of the right. I bet you'll see it in the what are the papers you read that had to do with the Constitution?
The Federalist Papers.
I bet if you read through that again or you check an index or ask Siri, I bet that word is in there multiple times in those writings. Forbearance, is a concept that the Republican Party 10 years ago decided to attack and try to eliminate. And that is what kept people from doing everything they can in a situation to get what they want, because inevitably doing everything possible to get what you want is probably going to cause extremely negative effects to other people.
I don't disagree with that.
Right?
And that is also happening, or I believe that will be the net effect of shit like putting more people on the Supreme Court,
well,
the whole the filibuster, all this crap.
That's why I'm not in favor of it.
I know.
Right?
This is where you bring all of your sense, your common sense.
Travis, you really get me.
I do. That's what makes us work.
Oh my God. We got to stop before this gets out of control.
Well, have you had enough fun for today?
I've had enough. I think everybody gets the point.
All right. Well, until the next one, everybody.
Happy. Yeah. Are we going to talk to people before Christmas?
Why not? Happy Easter.
All right. Happy Easter. Bye.